Hey everyone, welcome to One Winning Pod YouTube show. I think this is pretty cool, different from our normal coverage and whatnot, but I've been wanting to do it for about a year and a half now, I would say, and it's really awesome that Joey Pulone has agreed. He's a Ravens photographer to come and talk about photography and what it's like to shoot the sport. Joey, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course, you bet.
I guess when to get started, how long have you been shooting professional sports? How did you get your start in photography, and how long have you been working with the Ravens?
Yeah, it's funny. I've had a really weird transition into photojournalism, and um, I was a graphic designer out of college. So in college, I actually studied IFSM, got a Bachelor of Science in IFSM, Information Systems Management, for those that don't know the acronyms. And then I worked. The web was just becoming a thing that was becoming commercial, and very quickly I saw that my artistic skills, which I had been grooming since I was a little kid and was an art student through all through middle school, high school, and I kind of squashed it in college because I thought there was no way to make a living
Mm,
being any kind of artist. I sort of had been brainwashed a little bit.
sure.
Um, and I started doing sort of rudimentary design work on the web. And this was because the web was just so ugly and unusable. And so I was able to sort of quickly step into this role of becoming the web interface guy. And so I started out in there, and then that quickly got me going down the design rabbit hole. And then I discovered that I really enjoyed design more. So I left the sort of technology world, and then started doing brand identity design on my own
Hmm.
for small and medium sized companies. And then I sort of rediscovered photography. So my dad was a passionate hobbyist. And so he used to enter the Orange County Fair photo contest in Southern California, and he had a dark room in the garage, and I used to go
Oh
in
wow.
there when I was little, and it was very cool, seeing that whole process of black and white photography and how that worked. That definitely kind of hooked me a bit. Um, but I had lost touch with photography through high school and college, and then I rediscovered it when I bought my first sort of serious camera. For me, it was a Nikon N90, and and then I really, really got super interested. And then I started spending a lot of time at Borders bookstores,
Mm,
and because there wasn't a lot of photography online yet, there was some, but not a lot. So I'd go to Borders bookstores and I would devour the entire photo section of their store, just hanging out for a bunch of hours. And then and I got kind of hooked on celebrity kind of photography, kind of really good portrait photography.
mm.
And then all of a sudden, up on the top shelf, I saw a book, and it was really thick, very big, and it just said Inferno on the
It's fine.
the spine. And I was like, what the hell? And I like reach up, and I have it. It's around here somewhere. It's a substantial book, and it was James Noctway's book. And James Noctway is sort of, you know, a generation's greatest war photographer. And so I started flipping through that, and I had never had photography move me in that way before,
Mm,
where I was
mhm.
just smoked. I mean, I started weeping, and I'm in Borders bookstore, and I'm just weeping seeing these images. And I was like, whoa, I didn't know photography could do that. And so then that took me down, oh, this is photojournalism.
Mm.
This is a thing. And the deeper I got into it, the more I realized that I think I want to do this. Like, I think I need to do this. And then I realized that I needed to stop trying to hide it from my wife, because we had three little kids at the time.
Okay.
and, and and so it became a situation where it was, luckily, my wife is incredibly lovely, and she basically said, okay, let's make a plan. Let's figure out how you're going to do this, because it really was such an obsession that it was obvious I either needed to do it or bury it, because it was going to make me
Mm,
divorced if I didn't, sort of do something about it. So,
mm,
um, so then I started applying to competitive workshops. At first, I didn't get in, and then all of a sudden, I started getting in. And so I went to Truth with a Camera workshop, and I was by far the only person there that didn't have any experience. Everybody else had had like 10 years of experience shooting in the field and
mm.
working for newspapers and magazines and stuff. That was an amazing experience. Then I got into another workshop called Missouri Photo Workshop, and that was even more spectacular. And I was with more seasoned photojournalists, and it was just, and I knew I had found my sort of home. It was like the first time in my life where I felt like all my little personality quirks, my drawbacks, my talents, everything focused together in a point for the first time in my life. And so I thought, oh wow, this is it for me. And then I ended up, because I needed to make money and support my family,
Mm-hmm.
help support my family, I should say. Uh, then I got started shooting weddings, like a lot of
Right.
photojournalists at the time in the early 2000s ish. Around this is around 2005, 2007. Met a really neat guy, and we had a guy named Ben Chrisman, and we had like a similar sort of affinity for photography. Our heroes were the same, James Noctway, and we kind of saw the world the same. And that kind of sent me down a wedding road.
Mm-hmm.
And then he introduced me to a guy named Sean Hubbard.
Okay.
And he said, hey, there's this guy I met. I just shot his wedding. And I think you guys would really like each other. He's in Baltimore. You're down the street from Baltimore, because I'm in Ellicott City.
Okay.
And he goes, you guys need to hook up. So then I met Sean Hubbard, and Sean and I started shooting weddings with each other. I would assist him on his weddings. He would assist me on some of my weddings. And it was cool. And Sean and I did hit it off right away. And then one day Sean just said, hey, we need another photographer here at the Ravens. And
Mm.
I think you should get your portfolio in front of our people here and see where it goes. So we did that. And then that's kind of how I got started with the Ravens. And I I never thought I was going to shoot sports, even though I was an athlete.
Okay.
Um, I I think because maybe it was the whole James Noctway thing, it was the whole sort of hardcore photojournalism thing. I
Sure.
thought I just wanted to tell very serious stories. And even though I played Division I lacrosse at UMBC, and I was a high school football player and lacrosse player and an indoor track athlete, I I just didn't, yeah, I just didn't think that's where I wanted to go. And
Oh.
then lo and behold, the Ravens thing happened, and I really tried to take as much advantage of it as I could, because my role was quite small
Mm.
as I started, and then it's every year it's just sort of expanded.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and here I am, and the Ravens have been great. They kind of came into my life at the right time,
Okay.
and I haven't, even though we're all contract, the three of us, the three still photographers, um, working as a part of a team of people is something I haven't had in a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been absolutely wonderful, because it's when you're a solo freelancer for as long as I've been, you you start to realize that you miss that sort of camaraderie of being a part of a team.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. And it's really
Sorry, that was a
interesting.
lot.
No,
I
it's
think I
great.
just,
It's great because first of all, you revealed that you went to UMBC, as did I, and
oh, nice.
my co-host Chris. We both went. That's actually how we met each other. Was at UMBC. We started
Go Retrievers.
Go Retrievers. Yeah, we did a progressive rock music radio show, and that was like how we
Oh,
first started.
nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
and then we that went dormant after a while, and then we
Uh-huh.
started doing a Ravens podcast with our friend Peter, who actually joined in a couple times on that same previous podcast.
Oh,
But
sweet.
he went to
By the
Towson.
way, do they still call it progressive rock? Is that still a
I
genre?
think it is. Yeah,
Okay.
it's quiet. You know, there's a lot of different. It's weird because there's a lot of bands that still play progressive music, but it has a
Yeah.
lot of subgenres like progressive metal or progressive like I don't know
Yeah.
ambiance. Like I don't know. There's the. I feel like it's splintered even more. But
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And when I was a teen, progressive rock was kind of anything that wasn't mainstream American rock and roll,
right, right.
really,
If the
and
song went over 6 minutes, it's progressive.
yeah, I mean, it was a very broad category, and yeah, my exposure to it was back in the heyday of MTV, when MTV was actually cool,
Yeah,
and actually played music videos and stuff. So that's
right.
cool.
Well, it's also really cool kind of hearing your story as a photographer and as a photojournalist. I think it's a common story to hear, you started seeing images, you started just feeling the emotion they provoked and just becoming more and more curious about it. And we were talking about before how photography is becoming more and more accessible with everyone having a smartphone in their pocket that
Yeah.
take pretty darn good images. They even you
Hmm.
can go into portrait mode. You can do a lot of things to
Sure.
really I don't know, up the game, so to speak, of using those devices. And it's almost a shame. I don't know if you feel this way, but it's like with so many people able to take images and so many people engaging in taking images, there's so little training out there as far as when people grow up, they take art classes, they don't take photography classes. Like I never did. I remember there
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
choice to take it, but I never did at the time. And I regretted it because I was like, man, like this is the form of art I actually get to do every day. Right.
Right.
I
Right.
I learned how to like shape metal or paint and like I don't do
Right.
that. But
Right.
like taking good photos is something everyone could appreciate and everyone does. And yeah, it's kind of interesting how that works out.
Yeah, digital changed, really dramatically changed what I call the craft of photography.
Hmm.
Um, it hasn't really changed what I think is the art of photography. It's turned it up.
Hmm.
It's made the feedback learning loop way faster. You
Yeah.
know, for example, working in a studio when you're shooting film, like I have some commercial photography buddies and that used to do it, and everybody was shooting Hasselblads, and they would have a film back. They changed the back of the camera, and so
Hmm.
they would shoot Polaroids, to make sure they got their lighting right. And they'd
Right.
throw the Polaroids down, and then they'd know that the Polaroids were not going to be exactly like the print film or the slide film they were using. So they had to intuitively understand what the differences were.
Hmm.
And then when they were ready to go to film, they would like switch the backs, right? And it's like, that's a tough learning curve.
Yeah.
I mean, and then think about the delay in developing and processing the film between the time you shot it, the time you get it back. So the learning curve was much slower,
Hmm.
for sure. Digital changed that. It also made it easier to make an acceptable looking picture,
Sure.
because the cameras got smarter.
Hmm.
And even though the cameras can still be tricked, even though you can still muck up an image in extreme lighting situations, it just made it much, much easier, and
Yeah.
now with, iPhones and how smart the chips and the processing in phone cameras has gotten, that's crossed over into bigger cameras.
Hmm.
Um, but things like portrait mode, or where the thing that drives me crazy about an iPhone is when you make a picture outdoors
Uh,
and you see how the iPhone now, by default, this isn't something you can unselect, it kind of messes with the sky.
yeah.
You can
It's like that
tell
should be
that it's,
blue.
yeah, it's like holding the exposure in the sky down, and
Yeah.
so it makes the sky look a little artificial. It drives me bananas,
Yeah. The
but
HDR can really slap you in the face
yeah,
sometimes.
it's so ugly. It's so ugly to me because I know it's not real. I know that it's being processed, and
Right.
but that's changed people's expectations too, right? So
It
it's like
has.
now people think, oh well, the sky should always be dark and saturated, like, you know.
Yeah,
So it's kooky.
it
It's
is.
kooky.
And the thing that kind of got me into photography is so I remember when I was in middle school, I did yearbook, and we had a couple
Mhm.
digital cameras, kind of the point and shoot variety though. Like you had like a super zoom kind of thing, and you could, and I just kind of snap photos. Like I didn't. It was an auto,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And um, and then I got my friend lent me his DSLR, um, and I used it, and I was like, man, like I'm getting my exposure all wrong because I didn't have it in the EVF, and I
Yeah.
just didn't know the fundamentals
Sure.
and the exposure triangle. So I was like, man, this may be a little too much. And then the second I saw a mirrorless camera and the fact that the EVS was live in front of me, I was like, oh, okay, I think I can figure this out. And sure enough, within like a month and a
Yeah.
half, I was shooting in manual confidently because you just that
Instantly, you're
feedback loop was
seeing the
so
result.
fast. But if
Right.
I had to learn it the traditional way with film, it might have taken me months, to get to that level of comfort. And I think that's really interesting that you bring that up, and you've experienced seeing it, how people's ability maybe to become proficient really has ramped up from the digital age and some of the
Hmm.
affordances it gives you.
Oh yeah. And there's lots of, I used to teach a photography class. Oh boy, that's a whole story we could have over drinks. This school over in Georgetown in DC,
uh,
and one of the things I used to tell teach students, uh, because the technology is helping you so much,
mhm.
is I would say right away, I would say, okay, first off, you need to be shooting in manual mode because you need to start intuitively understanding how the aperture and shutter speed are related, and your ISO, and what you can do to manipulate them, and that has to become natural.
Mhm.
As soon as it becomes natural, you stop thinking about it, your images are going to improve vastly. And then the other thing I would tell them too is, shoot with fixed lenses if you can,
Mhm.
if you
Mhm.
can afford to buy fixed focal length lenses, because they are generally good ones, or can be expensive, but you can get, a 50 millimeter 1.8
Mhm.
used to be the lens that came with a camera
Right.
back in like I think it was really the 80s and
Mhm.
early 80s, before the camera companies started including crappy zoom lenses.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
would come with a 50, and
Right.
so you could really, because it had a big fast aperture, you could really learn to understand the relationship of aperture and what it does to depth of field. and
Mhm.
and so and then the other thing I would tell them is, um, stop shooting at like in between apertures. Like, learn in your brain, you want to learn what 2.8 looks like, learn what 4.0 looks like, learn what
Oh,
5.6
sure.
looks like,
Yeah.
8, right? And then when you get below 2.8, you can start massaging it. But and because that would really get that in your head, instead
Mm.
of sort
Mhm.
of massaging it in 1/3 increments, and little tricks like that really, really help to get that stuff down in your brain so it becomes all natural.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I actually want to now take that to the field and try it because
Yeah.
I have a tendency to either shoot relatively wide open
Mhm.
or I will stop down based off of maybe like an effect I'm trying to get. But I don't
Right.
think of it in increments. I kind of done just styled it like you said, like by
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
thirds being like
Yep.
okay, and usually maybe it's for things I have the privilege to wait for, like a landscape, like a
Right.
landscape, you
Right.
can just really dial it in. It's not maybe changing too much, but yeah, like knowing that depth of field, it is also really important for when you start doing weddings, like you mentioned. I think everyone eventually does a wedding when
Sure.
they get into photography, and but you're like, I gotta get everyone in focus, but I also want to show some dimensionality to the image. Like, how might I
Hmm.
do this in the best way? And that's like part of the art form, really.
Yeah, and it changes with each focal length, right? So
Yep.
it's
Oh
like,
yeah, exactly.
4.0 looks very different, at 21 millimeter than it does at 85 millimeter,
Yeah,
or
dramatically.
135 or 200, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, what starts to happen is you do it enough, and then you go into a situation and you already know what aperture you're going to use for the depth of field you want. Like, what kind of focus situation am I in? Creatively, do I want things to be sharp, that are beyond my subject and in front
Hmm.
of my subject?
Hmm.
Um, the trap that I think a lot of photographers run into, and especially now with mirrorless cameras, because they're so good at shooting wide open,
Hmm.
is to just have that aperture as big as possible all the time.
Right.
But it's a really it starts becoming a boring way to shoot, because what you'll
Right.
find is that only one thing is really sharp, right?
One single eyelash.
Right. Everything else is like going super soft, and that starts to become tiresome because you're not really getting into storytelling anymore. Now you're really all about one particular thing, and sometimes it's absolutely stunning and it's beautiful. We use it all the time in the stadium,
Mhm.
because football stadiums in the NFL are the visually most distracting sports environments ever created.
Right.
Like there's just so much visual noise going on in a stadium.
Yeah.
There's more people on the sidelines of an NFL football game than any other sport.
Hmm.
There's all the LED banners everywhere. It's just all visual noise. And so when we can, like in pregame and stuff, we're shooting at really big apertures with prime lenses, Sean and I.
Yeah.
And then gameplay, we're always shooting at 2.8 because we just don't want things to merge with the background, and we want the background to not be so distracting.
Okay. I was going
Um,
to ask you, are you
yeah.
shooting mostly at like 2.8 in the stadium? Like, because I imagine the lighting can be really challenging. Maybe even night games are easier in a way because you have the consistent LED lights versus, moving sunlights and all that.
Yeah. Well, we love the sunlight when it's good in the stadium,
Sure.
and unfortunately, that doesn't last long in our stadium. We're now at the point in the year where the good sunlight is only there for a tiny bit of time
Hmm.
at a 1 o'clock game. When they installed those corner LED boards, do you remember?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Was that 2019 that they put
I
them
think
in?
so. Yeah. Yeah.
That ruined. They clearly didn't consult us when they were considering this. It did two things. It let less light in at the end of the day
Sure.
through that one corner, the southwest corner, and then it also eliminated the 4 points in the stadium skyline where we could frame people without something
Oh,
being distracting behind them. And
right.
now those goddamn corner boards, they're in the way all the time now. It's so frustrating. Like, oh my God. I hate them so deeply. I want them to be taken out by a missile so bad, but
Next
whatever.
time there's the flyby before a game.
Yeah, yeah,
Pew!
please. Yeah. Unfortunately, Mr. Bashadi did not consult us.
That's really funny.
I know everyone's shocked by that. you know we're so low on the totem pole, like it's like we're like all the way down at the bottom, but
Oh man, that's really funny. I guess one last like maybe kind of gear question is
yeah,
what you're using these days, and particularly with lock on tracking, and you were kind of talking about how good the mirrorless cameras are now with
yeah,
keeping your subject in focus, being able to lock on, and then motor drive so many photos out. Has that
sure,
really changed your approach to photography now, particularly in a sports aspect, where you can really get that tweener shot and attempt things that no longer felt possible because you already have your focus locked in. Like maybe you locked in on Lamar, you're confident it'll stay locked in on Lamar, but
yeah,
now you can move and try to get that angle that you never really would attempt before.
yeah. I don't think it's changed things as much as you might think, at
Mm,
least for football.
okay.
Some other sports, I think it the tracking where the focus point is actually dancing around in the frame and
Yeah.
staying on the head of the subject. Unfortunately, that kind of tracking does not work for football.
The
Um,
helmets.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a combination of the helmets.
Uh-huh.
So the cameras are not smart enough to recognize that, oh, that's a human head with a helmet on it. They're not that good yet.
Hmm.
And then the other thing is there's so much collision happening and people crossing in front of one another that the camera simply doesn't know what to stay on. And so even when you have it set on the most locked on that you can set it,
Sure. Mm.
for Sony cameras, that's 2 or a 1, and it's like it's supposed to stay locked on. It will inevitably jump to another player, and then you're screwed.
It's on a stick.
Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
so it's that part of it hasn't changed that much. Um, it's certainly shooting at 20 frames a second or even 30 frames a second with like an A1 Sony.
Hmm.
It it's fantastic in that it increases your odds of getting the ball as it's just being released off of Lamar Jackson's hand.
Right.
And because that looks way better than the ball that when it's still in his hand or when it's been extended, it's a
Yeah.
few feet out of his hand kind of thing. Um, and so that's great. I mean, and especially for the more sort of creative stuff that we get to do, like in pregame or in practice when we get really physically close to the players and we get to kind of go to town creatively. Doesn't make as much of a difference when you're shooting with a 400 and you're looking down the field, but it's super helpful. Let's see, as far as the equipment goes, so I didn't start shooting a ton of action until just a few years ago,
Right.
because I was shooting kind of, my whole point for being at the Ravens was to kind of tell, shooting a bunch of marketing and sales related things, and then telling kind of the whole story around the football game.
Hmm.
So you would see a lot of my images from outside the stadium, the Ravens walk, and you'd see the people tailgating and that kind of stuff. And then you'd see a lot of stuff in the stadium too.
Uh-huh.
And it was very fan focused. Sean and Phil were doing really most of the action. I was dipping in and doing action when I could. I was shooting cheerleaders sometimes when I could, trying to make interesting different images of them.
Oh, those are fantastic on your portfolio website.
Oh, cool.
I really
Thank
thought they
you.
were cool.
I don't, we have a cheerleader photographer, Jill, and she's wonderful. And
Okay.
I never want to step on Jill's toes, and I don't really have that kind of time anymore to kind of shoot the cheerleaders during a game,
Hmm.
um, and kind of look for the creative stuff like I used to.
Yeah.
But thank you. I thought that stuff was fun too, and anytime I can find a new way to look at something, that gets me excited.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So anyway, so then Sony started pushing hard to get a bunch of us photojournalists to convert to their gear.
Okay.
And so Sean and I went to this event in DC, and they kind of wined us and dined us a little bit. And we met some of the people that had already converted. And we were like, oh, this is really good.
Hmm.
And we knew that they were probably a year to a 2 years ahead of Canon. And so I couldn't turn down the incentives, and I ended up selling all my Canon gear and going full hog with Sony.
Hmm.
Sean dabbled in both, and he ended up then selling all his Sony gear once Canon came out with the R3. Then he was all in,
Right.
and so he's stayed Canon. You know, right now the R3 is a better camera than
Then the A1.
Sony's
Yeah.
A1 or the A9 II. It's
Hmm.
the autofocus on the R3 it's scary good. Like
That's
it's
cool.
just so good. And then the build quality and the ergonomics of Canon stuff is just it's just I miss it
It's
so
better.
much. It's
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just better. It's
Yeah.
the Sony stuff, I've adapted to it. It's not been a quick process. It's taken me a long time to cancel out all the muscle memory I had with Canon.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's little ergonomic things that drive me crazy about Sony. Um, the accidental button pushing drives me crazy. Um, I want them to have a physical lock button, but they haven't given it to us. They have you can tell any button on the camera to lock settings, but you have to wait 5 seconds, which is an eternity. like there's
You're right.
like it's just so ridiculous. And I keep asking them, I'm like, just give us the option to have an instant lock. I'm like, because I mean, can you imagine like last weekend, Patrick Queen makes an interception, and maybe the defensive guys find one of us, and they're coming over and they want to
Yeah,
celebrate. And it's
sure.
like, hold on, guys, I gotta wait. I gotta unlock my camera to change the settings. Hold on one moment. Like it's like
Yeah.
5 seconds is an eternity. So,
Right.
and we
Right.
lock the settings because we're working with generally 3 cameras at a time, and
Yeah, that makes sense.
they get bumped.
Sure.
It's like stuff is bumping around your body, and you just don't want the settings to change until you want them to change. And
Exactly.
then,
Oh, that's really
um,
interesting.
yeah. So I've been with Sony since uh, fall of 2019 was,
Sure.
yeah, that was when I started testing it.
Hmm.
And then I committed the next summer.
Yeah.
And yeah.
When I was choosing, I was trying to buy a camera. I've been looking since like 2020, but I ended up
Mhm.
purchasing in early 21. And the at that point, I went with Sony because, like you mentioned, their AF was really good, but also I was really I really liked the fact that I could buy third party lenses that were really
Yeah.
great and
Yeah.
much more affordable.
Yeah.
For like a hobbyist or someone just getting into it, that was what got me. But now that I see some of the stuff that Canon has, like the you know 2.0 zoom lenses, those are really nice. Like Sony doesn't have that on the E mount, and I don't know if they
Yeah.
ever will. And stuff like that, and also the ergonomics. I completely agree. Like I don't understand why. I understand somewhat why they make the cameras as small as they do. I think that's one of their things.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look how tiny it is. But it's like, no, I
Yeah.
want it to be a nice chunky boy in my
Yeah.
hand, and
I
like
know.
it's like way more comfortable for extended shooting. So
Yeah.
maybe the Sony they seem to each iteration make them a little chunkier. So maybe the next time I buy a body, several years down the line, it'll be a nice nice ergonomic
Yeah.
option.
I mean, listen, I'm hoping I've developed a really nice relationship with the Sony rep in the region, David Snyder, and he's been wonderful. And he lets me ask stupid questions of him, and I also send him my feedback. And I'm hoping that that stuff does get to the engineers. And I try to complain often and loud, not to be a pain in the ass, but just to say, hey, like we really need this, like this for this kind of shooting. We really need this.
Hmm.
I hope they're listening. When the A9 III comes out, I really hope that it's not just the focus system from the A1, which the A1's focus is definitely a little quicker.
Hmm.
It's quicker to acquire. That's kind of the thing that I've noticed about the A1. But I hope they go up another level.
Yeah.
And then all these other little things, like how you move the focus point, changes. I hope that they make this focus point smaller so
Mm,
that I can reach when you're close to a player, it can reach inside the face mask and grab the eye. Because
sure. Yeah.
Canon can do that.
Oh,
The
nice.
the
Okay.
R3 can do that. It's sweet. But for me, like when I get really close, it's like it can't get in there because the focus
Uh,
point is just simply too big.
I've kind of
So
noticed that too. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
it's just little, it's all these little things kind of add up,
Hmm.
that I hope they make better. The durability, I'm always asking Sony, I'm like, please make the stuff more durable. Please make it more durable. Because I've broken a lot of stuff.
Oh, really?
Oh
Mm.
yeah. Oh yeah. The 7200 was the worst version one.
Oh, yeah, that lens. Yeah.
I broke it several times where it just the front element cracked off
Oh, wow.
just from like bouncing against my hip, you
Oh,
know,
wow.
fast walking, stuff like that. But I have the version two now, and so far it's been, knock on wood. So far it's been solid, so that's great. Um, but yeah, so it's been an interesting journey. The cameras are, you know, they're really great, and I always have to remind myself that, you know, each generation of camera, it's been better and better. It's made my job easier. It's given me the ability to get more in focus images,
Hmm.
which is a really big deal. I mean, we used to get, gosh, if you really hammered on it in an action situation and you shot 20 frames, it used to be where you hoped and prayed that like a handful were in focus.
Right. Right.
And now you're often getting them all in focus, not always. And
Hmm.
and you will, if you ever attend a game
Yeah.
and there's a big play, and off in the distance you hear above the roar of the crowd, if you hear a fuck, just know that that's me. And that means I've messed up the play. Like I missed focus, or I missed the jump from the quarterback to the receiver or something.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
screwed it up. And yeah, so it's never always perfect, but yeah, it's
I,
so frustrating.
that's actually, I guess, one last maybe sort of gear question is I know
Yeah.
that you have like the streamers on your camera that kind of send the images off to I guess social media or whoever with the Ravens.
Yeah,
Is
we
that
have
true?
we wear a little cellular transmitter because the Wi-Fi in the stadiums is not reliable.
Sure. Yeah.
So we have a little we've had to play with these things a lot to get them right. It's kind of it's cute, but it's very homemade looking. So it's like this cellular transmitter with a big battery on it that can last a whole day of
hmm
shooting. And then it's got these antennas, and we tape it all together. So it looks like a small bomb, and then that goes in our little waste bag.
uh,
And then the cameras now are this last generation of cameras are really good about being able to set them up to connect to any kind of Wi-Fi hotspot you tell, which it becomes the little thing
yeah.
around our waist. And then you can just review an image really quickly
Uh,
and hit send, and then it's going off and it gets pushed up to our FTP server. And then on a game day, for example, so we have people sitting up in the press box, and then they're seeing those coming in, and then
okay.
they
So
can
you get
post
to
them to
choose. It's
social
not
media.
just all of them.
Correct.
Okay. That's
Although the
nice.
team wants all of them, and and so they'll send some folks down to grab our cards
uh-huh.
that are full of our medium JPEGs, and because we shoot raw to one card, medium JPEGs to the other card,
Sure.
and we'll give them those, and then that way they have all of them, quarterly or at halftime or whatever. So
Okay.
it's crazy.
Yeah, I was curious like are you able to apply any like of your like editing style? Do they have like any presets? But it sounds like you're giving them JPEGs, so like
Yeah,
they're just
no,
getting what they get.
no,
Okay.
you're expecting way too much of that process. No, no,
No, no,
no.
I
Yeah, no.
actually I would be very surprised if that existed. That's why I was asking though. I was
Yeah,
just
no.
curious. Like,
They're straight out of the camera. I mean, whatever our settings are for our JPEGs in the camera, which are pretty down the middle straight,
yeah.
we're not doing anything at all because we don't want them to be dramatic coming out of the camera, right?
No, of course not. Yeah.
So we just want them to be publishable, those JPEGs.
Yeah.
So yeah, but you'll see those like on Instagram or and Twitter and stuff. Those are our images that are happening during the game.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, I was wondering if there's any kind of pipeline where it got the image and they like had a couple presets they could choose from to like kind of maybe hone in on your style. But I guess is that difficult for you to like have to give up that part of the creative control of photo
Well,
storytelling?
so our web galleries that we make for the website,
Yeah.
um, and then the final sort of fat edit of images that we give the team. So Sean and I do, we edit and post process all of our own work.
Okay.
It's the most painful part of the process for me because I'm slow. Um, I'm constantly working to try to get faster. I'm constantly picking Sean's brain because he's so much quicker than me to try to get to be faster. But that's where we put our creative spin on it. But we really kind of keep it dialed back. We don't go as far as we would love to go
Mm.
for two reasons. One is time. We just can't spend that much time on the images. And then two, it's, we want to keep it, we want to be as honest and photojournalistic as we can. So because
hmm
we're creating the historical document of the team. So we can't be sort of too wacky.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Um, but we love drama. I mean, but we try to keep it honed in. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, you want it to be timeless, right? Like that's what
Yeah.
you're, yeah, like you don't want it
Yeah.
to be any kind of fad or anything like that.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's think more National Geographic and
hmm
less Wired magazine
For sure.
or
For
whatever.
sure.
I probably just dated myself there, but Wired used to have really creative graphic design and photography. I don't know if they still do.
I wouldn't know either. but I guess to kind of wrap up the conversation, I was hoping you could show us some of your images, whatever you like, maybe kind of tell some behind the scenes of them or how you got them or what makes you
Sure.
really enjoy the composition. So yeah, feel free to share your screen. I might have to approve it or
Okay.
something. But
Let's see. All right. So this was the stuff I entered into last year's Hall of Fame contest. And yeah, we can chat about these.
oh wow,
Um yeah, so this image, let's see, why don't I do it? Sorry. I think it's cropping my image here. Yeah, let's do it this way. All right, there we go. Um, yeah, so this image ended up winning. So I was lucky and fortunate enough to I won a few prizes. So
oh
this last contest. So this image ended up winning in the feature category. Um, and it was it was pretty funny. So the people at the Hall of Fame, they announced the awards, and then sometime later, their person had tweeted this image, so started tweeting some of the winning images on their Twitter account, and tweeted this one and made kind of a nice kind of compliment, kind of jokey thing where he said, don't adjust your monitor or something like this is real kind of
yeah,
thing.
uh huh,
And then it got like Lamar had reposted it, and it gave me some fire emojis or whatever. I love how brief, these young guys that are on their phones constantly. It's so funny, like they're so fast and everything is so brief, and I'm so long-winded. I'm such an old guy. So and then like I made the mistake of like looking at some of the comments that were there, and it was
hmm
so funny. Like a bunch of people started criticizing the image because they said it was photoshopped, um, and that this was all done in Photoshop kind of thing. And
uh-huh.
then it was just so funny to me that people were having that conversation, and um, it was such an easy question to answer. It's like, no, it wasn't Photoshop, and
Uh-huh.
um, so anyway, we've got a few sort of toys that we play with, Sean and I, and just to try to do something a little bit different.
Right.
And this is just one of the little toy glass things that I have, shooting through, and it was one of those things where it's just right moment, right time, everything just lines up, and you get, you know, you get a little lucky. There's a little luck in all of sports photography.
Right. Yeah, that was really cool. I was going to ask you like how you mix it up because I know with sports photography, it can feel like you're shooting the same thing every week or whatever.
Yeah.
But it seems like stuff like this like allows you to kind of get that creativity, try different things out, and see what works. So that's really cool
Yeah,
that it worked out well for you in this
yeah,
image.
and there's a balance too, because a lot of the stuff that is more creative for Sean and I, the team doesn't necessarily care about. That the team doesn't look at photography the same way that we do. So there is a balancing act. Um, yeah, I just thought this image was just really unusual, and that it it's almost like something out of the Bible to me. It's just so
yeah.
it's just so strange. And so I love, I love when moments like this happen where you have this just really unusual body language or shapes or whatever, and it becomes this really interesting moment caught in time.
How often do you get to move around while you're at the stadium?
Constantly moving around,
Hmm
constantly moving around. So it's um, and on at home games, because there's three of us. Uh, Phil takes the home side, Sean takes the visitor side, and they're working generally around the corners of the end zones.
Okay.
Um, and so we generally try to face our defense when our defense is, we want to, so that we see players' faces,
Right.
and then we're facing the offense, right? And then that gives me the freedom. So I take sort of more high risk positions,
hmm
where I'm more likely to get obstructed by something, by the ball boys that are on the sidelines, or the guys with the sticks,
Uh,
or you know, security people. There's an infinite number of people, it seems. But when things do come my way, it gives me a chance to get a more unusual angle
cool.
that Phil or Sean are not getting. So sometimes that works out, but we're all three of us were constantly moving. It's a very, very physical job.
Mhm.
Most people don't realize how physical it is.
Oh, after shooting my first wedding, I figured out how physical it was because I
Oh
had
yeah,
all my
it's
lenses on
nuts.
me the whole time. I was like, I need better core strength.
Yeah, yeah, it's no bullshit. Like it is extreme, and you know and and for me too, a lot of times I have to go up to the 500 section and make an image, and I've got to run back down. So it's like,
Oh
and you're not
wow.
taking elevators because they're too slow. So it's like
Oh man.
literally running up to the 500
With all the
to the
gear.
nosebleeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, making an image and then getting her butt back down onto the field for the next thing.
Nice.
Um, this was another game from that, or image from that Chargers game last year, and this is actually a good example talking about light in M&T.
Uh-huh.
That was the one day of that entire season when we had the best light in the stadium,
Mm-hmm.
and we only got one of those.
Yeah.
Like, and where the light just was wonderful, and so all the images of that day they just pop more.
Mm-hmm.
But this was, I just love this image. Normally when you're shooting across the field like that and the play is happening far away from you on the far sideline, normally that image doesn't look very good, because even shooting with a 400 at 2.8, you start to merge with the background.
Uh-huh.
But this one worked out so beautifully, and you have the backgrounds actually helping tell the story. And I believe that's Sammy Watkins in the middle there next to the wide receiver coach Keith,
Yeah.
and he's the one that's pointing, right? And I
Yeah.
just and I and I just love Marquise's body language there, his eyes, and then the guy just, you can tell he's missing the tackle, and he's totally horizontal and airborne, and yeah, I love this image.
This is a stunning image. I completely agree. And I love the emotion. Like it's not so blown out that you can still see the emotion on Keith's face of like, ooh, he's about to
Oh
turn
yeah,
upfield.
oh
And,
yeah.
and
This
is
is
this image cropped at all or is this
Oh
exactly on
yeah.
camera? Okay.
All the images are cropped.
Okay. I was
There
about to
there
say that'd be
is
also phenomenal composition too, like
yeah,
live in the moment, like holy crap.
yeah. That's the one thing that took me a while to wrap my head around, that, and Sean was really the one that kind of had to kind of teach me and say, oh no, 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 everything needs to be cropped.
Yeah.
Was coming from that, being obsessed with James Nachtwey's work, where every millimeter of the frame is
It's
carefully composed,
intentionally right.
and you
Yeah.
don't ever touch, you never crop. Nachtwey, even, because he shot film for most of his career, he would even include the edge of, in the printing, would include the edge of the film frame to show, like, this is the full frame, to
Uh-huh.
like kind of almost as like proof, right? So I had that in my head, and when with sports photography, that's just simply not possible. That's not the way you shoot.
Mm-hmm.
You can't fill the frame. Things are happening way too fast.
Sure.
You're
Yeah.
just hoping to get focus. Like
Right.
you're just hoping you nail focus.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything is cropped
I, I,
100%.
I thought it would be because like the way that they're compressed versus like how far away you probably were. Like
Yeah.
it, yeah. But that's really cool though. That like again, with the technology we have today, like this image still holds up great and it'd be
Yeah.
phenomenally blown up and it wouldn't be an issue. So that's really
Yep.
cool that you're able to capture that and still be able
Yeah.
to crop.
That's actually one of my favorite things about the A1, and why I'll shoot the A1 on the 400 all day, is because at 50 megapixel, it, it basically makes it almost like, not quite, not as good, but it's almost like I'm shooting with a 600. So when the play is really far away, where you're really out of the reach of the 400. So, if I'm down in the end zone or near the end zone, let's say the 10-yard line, and I'm shooting play and it's beyond the 50, on the other side of the field. That's really where you need a 600. But with the A1, I can punch in so much and still have fantastic quality that's way more, overkill for online presentation, but it's even still printable. Like, it really is it's pretty wonderful. It's pretty great.
That is great. I guess one other question is, do you
Yeah.
intentionally shoot a little wider because you know you're probably going to crop it anyways, just to try to maybe capture more of the scene?
In action game time situation, yes. So, and that's been it's been a tough thing to learn, but
Hmm.
leaving enough space so that when the quarterback throws, you're not cutting off the quarterback's hand.
Right.
You know
Yep.
what I mean? Or leaving enough space at the bottom so that when the quarterback hands it off or the quarterback runs, like our wonderful quarterback does, like you're not cutting things off. So it's trying to keep it all. And then other times, like say you're riding the 400 out and the play starts coming towards you,
Yeah.
you just say to hell with it and you just try to stay focused on the player, and then you just let the lower body start getting cut off, and then if the play is really going bonkers, then you switch cameras really fast.
Oh wow. Yeah.
um which
Really fast.
really fast. Yeah, I can show you an example of that from the Titans playoff game
Oh wow.
from last year. So
Okay.
God,
2 years ago,
yeah,
2020.
yeah, 2020 season. That's right. We didn't go to the playoffs last year.
No.
It's all starting to meld together now. It's just
Yeah.
all starting to
Well,
like
and how long did you say you've been shooting with them?
this is my ninth,
Oh wow. Very
eighth
cool.
season, and I'm the new guy.
Oh
Not the
wow.
young guy, but the new guy.
Oh man, I
Sean,
love the emotion in this image.
oh yeah. Yeah.
So cool.
Um, yeah, this, same game,
Hmm.
great light. It makes all the difference. And this is even in the shadow light, but you can just tell the colors just popped. And yeah, Justin Houston, man, he was getting after it that day. I mean, the whole day he was after Herbert, and it was so fun to see him, getting pressure. And um, he is he's like a man's man. Like Justin Houston, it's so funny because what is he? He's 34, maybe
Hmm.
something
Right.
like that.
I think
But
so. Yeah.
he looks so much like more mature than all the other guys on the team.
Right.
It's like watching a man with like high schoolers. But he's got a great face, and his body is like so. Yeah, he's a stud.
He's
Um,
33 years old apparently, and
33.
he'll be
Yeah,
turning 34 during our hopeful playoff run.
it's wild. Yeah, it's crazy the age. Because same with like Calais.
Yeah.
Calais looks like he could be the guy's dad.
That dad.
Like
Right.
he just looks like dad. It's so great. Um, this image ended up winning last year too. Um, it's player introductions are really tricky to get something different that really pops, and it's super unpredictable with the smoke, because we don't do the flames anymore because those are too dangerous.
Right.
which is fine, whatever. And the smoke now makes things really unpredictable because then the camera will start misfocusing and you lose
Yeah.
focus, and it's
Yeah.
just it's just a nightmare. Um, and but this just worked out, and it's one of those things where you envision in your head, you put yourself in the right situation where you think something good could happen,
Right.
and then this just some serendipity between the shadow of the bird in the smoke and then Sammy Watkins happening to do that
Yeah.
at that moment. And it just, yeah, and by the way, that doesn't happen often where the stars line up like that.
Oh yeah.
We get you might get a couple of those a year, and you're super stoked.
Yeah, the way, like I saw the bird shadow. I thought that was really cool. You have the
Yeah.
composition just right to get play like a raven at the top of the frame, and then
Yeah.
of course like right underneath his armpit, you got himself on
Yeah.
the big trot. Like the composition's perfect, but it's not just luck that all those things came together. It's also knowing, like you said, having the foresight to be like, I think I see an image here. Let me get myself in position and be
Yeah.
ready. And it may or may not actually happen, but if it does, like that's the reward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not piss off the TV cameras, the TV camera guys, because they always, they have priority over everything. So it's
Sure.
not making other photographers mad or like screwing somebody up. And I know there's so many things that have to line up. Sean's not in the background. Like
Yeah.
because Sean
Right.
normally he'd be over on the field shooting back at the tunnel, and like he wasn't there. And like there's just so many things.
Right.
It's crazy.
Really
Um,
cool.
I um,
Oh, nice.
yeah. So this is an interesting story. So this isn't the best image I've ever made by a long shot. Like there's so much wrong with this photographically that drives me absolutely bananas.
Right.
But it was a really special moment in time. And I ended up getting the only image of all the 40 something photographers that are there on a game day. And remember that was a primetime game. So
Right.
against the Chiefs. So it was, there's so much attention. I was the only one that got an image of Lamar facing the camera. Everybody else was in the other end zones.
Oh,
And
okay.
so they got his back, or they were way too far away from the play because it was in the southeast end zone. And so this is a good lesson for young photographers out there. So um, right before the game, I had my credential revoked.
Oh.
Didn't know why. Just the senior VP of media, she I think texted me probably and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, you've lost your credential for the game. You're going to have to shoot from the stands." And I just spent almost the entire season before, because of COVID, shooting from the stands.
Uh-huh.
And so I was really sort of upset. And I
Mm.
was like,
Oh,
why,
yeah, because this was the
why
first
is,
game. Yeah.
yeah, why is my credential being revoked?
Sure.
Even
Mm.
our cheerleader photographer, she was on the field. All the other photographers from the Chiefs, and the Chiefs have a big photo staff. They were all on the field. All
Mm.
their video people, all our video people, everybody was on the field except for me.
Right.
So I was pretty worked up.
Sure.
And then I think it was around halftime or whatever, and I was like, okay, Pulone, pull it together. I was like, it's like the self-talk, right? I was like, come on, kid, pull it together. I was like, what are you gonna do? And I was like, okay, like what can I do to make the best of this situation? So I thought, all right, I'm gonna put myself in a spot in the stadium where if something good happens, I'm going to get an angle that nobody else would ever dream of
Get
getting.
right.
It probably won't work out because I'll get obstructed by the goalpost, or I'll get obstructed by a fan that's jumping up and cheering or
Sure.
something.
Right.
So I put myself right down on the rail, right behind the end zone, um, right up against these two older gentlemen who were not pleased that I was next to them. Like I was down on my knees, and you could tell they were very irritated that I was right there with this big lens,
Yeah, yeah.
and then it was the point in the game where things were heating up. It was becoming exciting, and the Ravens were marching down the field, and then all of a sudden, and then I had to make a choice whether I was going to ride out my 400 or I was going to switch to the 7200.
Uh
7200, I knew I'd probably be under lensed. And I knew if something exciting happened with the 400, I might be over lensed.
yep.
And
Yep.
the 300 is like the magic focal length that, you know, all of us wish we had like a 70 to 300 2.8 lens.
Yeah, right.
That it's this magic weird spot that's missing and all the camera manufacturers don't make.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, then of course this play happens,
Yeah.
and it all happened so quickly. I was on the 400. I knew I was over lensed, and that's why it's cropped so tightly. So this image is actually, it's straight out of camera. Like there was no more room
Yeah.
It literally happened like that. And and so anyway, I knew that was such a special moment. The crowd went absolutely nuts. I saw the image, I sent it, and then it ended up breaking all of our social media records.
Yeah.
This single image. And nobody knew it was me because we don't on social media, they don't share who took the photos.
Right. Right.
They do on the website, but they don't on social media.
Hmm.
I still don't understand why, but
Yeah.
that's
The
a
tweet
whole
usually has a room, but
it's a
yeah.
whole thing. So,
I'm sure. Yeah.
it was yeah, the next day Michelle called me and she said, that broke all our social media records. That was your image, right? And I was like, yeah.
Wow.
And so yeah, it was just one of those special moments. Not the greatest image in the world, but a really special moment in time. And that's something that will probably, that may not ever happen again in my career, where
Right. All
something
those
that
events.
special happens.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. It's different.
Very nice.
Um, yeah, this is just another intro picture that worked out. And it's just it's so hard to get these things to work out, and Marlon was super animated. And um yeah, it's I dig this image. I think it's cool.
Yeah. So, which game is this now? Like,
I don't know what game that was.
yeah, because it
I'd
doesn't
have to
have.
I'd have to look it I'd have to look it up. Here, I can see really quick. Oh, it's the Colts game.
Oh wow, and that's like a cool game too because of the comeback and everything.
Yeah. I mean, oh my gosh. That was nuts. Um, I've never seen players so excited after the game.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
It was super crazy. This is probably that game. I think this is the Colts game too.
Hmm.
And Harbaugh, and this doesn't always happen. The fans were just going nuts,
Uh.
and it was just so much joy, and then to see Harbaugh having a good time and engaging the fans, which he doesn't always do. He sometimes does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that was just, yeah, that was a fun night. And then this is actually, moments later when Lamar and Marquise like came down to go into the tunnel. I had never seen players so excited before, and they were literally running. And
Uh.
I'd never seen, and they were running and they're just going crazy. And the moment after I made this image, which was cool and was exciting, they took off running for the locker room.
Hmm.
And I was so mad that I wasn't in the locker room, or in the hallway facing back,
Sure. Sure.
because they were like, it felt to me, it felt like high school or college kids when they just get so excited after a big game. They just felt like young guys.
Sure.
And that was so fun to see them having so much fun. It was just, that was neat. That was really cool
Super
stuff.
cool. Yeah.
And then I think this was this was the second time we played the Steelers last season.
Hmm.
So end of the season. Yeah, last game of the season, right?
The rain and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, this was the rain game with Tyler Huntley. This was a big moment. We ended up losing the ball on this play.
Mm.
And this was the play where it's so funny. It's so funny how fans latch on to stuff that they see on TV. And fans were criticizing, I think, Huntley, because they thought Huntley made the situation worse. And like by reaching for the ball or something that had basically given the Steelers the ball, that he ruined that moment, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And in my photos, you could tell that that's not what happened at all, and it was it actually, yeah, it wasn't his fault that the ball continued to bounce the way it did. And but yeah, I just thought this was a really unusual moment where you're seeing all these faces. They're all going after the ball.
Yeah, the
The
balls in
ball
focus.
is,
It's a pretty cool. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
really cool image.
yeah. I thought it was neat, all the things lining up like that.
How do you keep your lens clean during that situation?
Well, this is a 400, so the 400 has that giant hood on it.
Right.
And so the
Yeah.
rain's not going to get in there on that lens. Now, it is a problem on the 2470 around my neck, or
Yeah.
1635, definitely when I switch to that around my neck.
Yeah.
The rain constantly is getting on it. Um, the 7200 has a pretty big hood. It generally stays
That makes
rain
sense.
free, although a
Yeah.
little bit sometimes gets on there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely those wider lenses have those really teeny tiny little tulip guys. And
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, they get wet constant. It's such a pain.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just, this is one of the things that's really tricky for us is, and this is why I really like these. We don't see a lot of these images because when the players celebrate a big play, they naturally turn back towards the bench and they run towards the bench. And we're not allowed beyond that yellow line, that bench area.
Sure. Yeah.
So and Harbs kind of stays in the middle of the field. He seldom gets beyond, that edge of the bench area.
Yeah. Where
So
the diagonal starts.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's really hard for us to get good images of Harbs. Really, really hard. Even if you're on the opposite side of the field with the 600, you're still too far away to get this tight of a composition.
Yeah.
Um, so when these moments do happen, and I purposely try to cheat up towards the bench in a lot of situations so that if something big happens and there's a big celebration, I can sometimes get something. There's so many things though that happen that generally ruin it. So it doesn't happen often.
Yeah. Very cool.
This was just an unusual. Oh, and this image won Hall of Fame awards too.
Oh wow.
So not yeah Najee Harris, what a stud athlete that guy is. And this was what you don't see in this picture was Jimmy Smith launched himself at Najee and at like an upward angle,
Okay.
and Najee jumped over him, and this is kind of after the peak of his leap, right? So it just, but this was framed against the background like this. So
Hmm.
it was one of the most athletic things I've ever seen. I mean, just to be able to do that quickly and to leap over upwards rising Jimmy Smith and Queen, and then it was just really, really wild and cool looking, and those things just don't happen very much. It's
It's also
just
a fun moment in time for Queen because he looks like he's like sort of dancing.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. It's like he looks really off balance, and like, yeah, it's just wild. Yeah.
yeah, very cool.
Um. The Oh yeah, I did want to. Here, I'll show you. Let's see. I think there's a couple images in here that I thought would be fun to talk about.
Oh yeah, I remember that image, first one.
Yeah, so this is an area of the bench we are 100% not allowed
I was
in.
about to
So
say,
like,
I think that's fun.
so right when the national anthem ends and after the coin toss, all that stuff. So there is a brief moment of time where there's kind of chaos happening in the bench area, and we're getting off the field. And in that brief moment of time, I sometimes like to hang out a little bit longer than I maybe should,
Mm-hmm.
but it's in that transition time. So I'm basically going to give up it by doing this. I sometimes give up the kickoff,
Yeah,
because it's just so tight. But I sometimes try to find something in there. And this game, it was just rain. I think this might have I think this was the San Francisco game.
Yeah, that's what it said. The 49ers game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pouring. Just
Pouring.
God,
Yep.
it was pouring. And yeah, and I just hung out there and I was down on my knees trying to be cool. And QB coach James he's generally pretty tolerant of me, and he's cool about me being near them. Um and Lamar, in those situations, Lamar is dialed in, so he is completely, totally ignoring me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so to me, this is what it's all about. These are actually my favorite images. It's
I
like
bet.
these
Yeah.
little in between moments that are not action,
Hmm.
where there's drama. and
Right.
uh and it's just, yeah, I love this stuff. And I wish that corner board was gone. If we could just make that disappear right up in that. I hate those things so much. um Josh
Oh, cool.
Bynes, man, he is like one of my favorite guys to photograph on the team. He's got such a great face. His eyes are always like focused, and
Yeah.
he's got big eyes, and he's just a cool guy, animated.
Yeah. The rain coming off his fist there. It's really
Oh
cool.
yeah, it's so silly. It's just, God, it was pouring that day.
Yeah. That was the first game I wore a poncho with like, I usually like will just rough it out, quote unquote, because I'm just like, it's not worth the heat's
Right.
not worth the squeeze. That game, it was totally worth the squeeze, and we were still
Oh,
drenched.
oh
We
yes.
were still
Oh
drenched.
yes. That's cool. It's actually one of the cool things I like about, football, is that because the elements are such a part of it, and we don't cancel games generally for weather, right? It's like
Right.
the fans kind of have to be viscerally involved when the weather's ugly, because it's like you have to withstand the elements too. So it's
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, and this is same game. Um Ingram, I miss Ingram. Oh man,
Oh yeah.
his energy and his whole personality, and just he was great. He was so much fun.
Yeah, it's cool how
Uh
those lights are. It seems like with the rain, maybe like impacting the image, but it kind of makes a cool effect.
yeah, for sure. That was part of the draw to this. Is
Yep.
sometimes you get these little happy accidents,
Yep. Exactly.
where instead of it ruining the image, it actually ends up adding to the image and making it fun.
Hmm.
Oh, my color is so off on this, so I apologize. The purple looks really garish here. Um, but this was, again, this is like one of those moments where there's not a lot of these, and I just, able to get a nice little moment between RG3 and Lamar. And RG3 was like, he was just such a neat guy. Um, he just brought a really nice energy, um, and his relationship, it seemed, at least from the outside looking in, seemed like it was really cool between him and Lamar.
Mm, it's really cool.
This image ended up winning a Hall of Fame award.
Oh, nice.
So this was the last game of the season. Titans beat us. This is towards the end of the
Oh, I
game.
remember this play. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and Marquise made this ridiculous catch, and I was in a really high risk position on the field, right at the 10-yard line.
No doubt. Yeah.
Normally, right there, it just doesn't work out. The play came my way. I was riding my 7,200, and it just worked out.
That's
Um,
awesome.
it
Yeah.
just the For me, the reason this image works is, so not only is it a one-hand catch, it's the shapes that their bodies are making and their
Exactly.
arms. It's
Right.
just
The
so
mirroring.
unusual. It's
Right.
like, it to me, it looks like it was fake, like it was a painting or something. And um, as soon as I made the image and I saw it on the back of the camera, it was just one of those ones where I was like, oh, that's
That's it.
special. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, that's just not normal. Like that just doesn't happen,
Right.
like,
Right.
and
Right. Right.
I knew it was a special image.
Yeah, I love this image. And I know exactly that feeling you're talking about. Like, I was shooting a concert not too long ago, and I got this picture of the bass player, and he just looked like a total hero, right? And like, he was so in
Uh-huh.
the moment, and like the way the light was playing with his the headstock of his bass, and
Uh-huh.
just the shapes and everything. I was like, oh, this is like a keeper. And then the moment
Yeah.
I like pre-processed, that was the one I sent to him, and I made like the art, like the like the teaser and the thing, I was like, yeah, I love this image. And sure enough, like it seemed really well received too. Like it's
Yeah,
cool how that happens. Sometimes like you see the moment, you think that's a good moment, you take a peek at the camera and you're like, oh yeah, that was it.
it's really those are the special images. Like to me, that's what keeps me going.
Yep.
Like if I didn't have those, I wouldn't be doing this because it's like those are the little mini rewards to me that um, keep me excited, keep me searching for another one, another really special moment. And when all those things line up and the serendipity's there, man, yeah.
Yeah,
In
it's just
in
so cool.
in our world, in the photography world, to me, there's nothing better. It's not like, it's like my son is a musician, and I'm so jealous of musicians because it's such a collaborative art form, right? So it's not only can you enjoy it by yourself, but you enjoy it at a whole nother level when you're sharing it with other people,
Yeah.
musicians.
Hmm.
And then you have an audience that shares with you, right? And there's this
Hmm.
whole thing happening. We don't have that in photography. And, you know, shooting with another person is not like two musicians playing together.
Not at all. Right. Yeah. I know.
It's just
It.
different. It's just not the same. And
Yeah,
so,
and it's
yeah,
also challenging too because when you're shooting in a team, like you said, you're taking a higher risk shot. They might be able to save your spot, and then you're like, oh man, I wish I was there because my shot didn't work out or whatever. And like,
right.
like when you're in the team situation, sometimes you're taking those higher risks that may not end up in a reward, and it could be discouraging almost more so than encouraging of being part of the team. So it's an
Yeah.
interesting balance.
Yeah. It's wild. Like I complained, Sean, oh, this actually, I guess I'll show you guys this. Yeah, Sean texted me Monday and said, "Hey man, how did you feel about the game?"
Hmm.
And I said, "Oh, and I like went down the list of things I was complaining about, that I didn't get or didn't work out." And then he reminded me, he was like, "Dude, you got like two of the biggest plays in the game." He's like,
Yeah.
"You got the Andrews touchdown. You were in the perfect place for the Andrews touchdown."
Right.
And he's like, "And you got the Queen interception." He's like, "You had a good game." And I was like,
Yeah, the good
I
game.
was like, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
you're probably
All
right.
right."
But I'm still mad his
Um,
composition on this one image that probably wouldn't have mattered.
yeah, it's just, there's so much going on.
Oh, that's a
Um,
cool shot.
yeah, this was different when Lamar kind of walked, he kind of danced into the end zone, right? And he did this little thing, and um, against the Patriots, that was a wild night
Hmm.
where we just really really took it to the Patriots. That was fun.
Yeah.
Um, oh, Willie Snead.
Yeah.
Snead, he's a neat guy. Really, really
Cool.
neat guy. This is actually a good example of more depth of field and a wide angle image that we don't get to do a lot of. But this is like where my heart is.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
it's got layers,
Hmm.
and it this is like where I hope all my work can get to, because there aren't a lot of moments like this, where it's the lighting is cool. There's layering going on in the extreme foreground, then the middle ground, and the background, and the subject, and
Hmm.
all the things just line up. I don't think other people necessarily appreciate it the way that maybe I do and Sean do, but yeah, these are the images that I they're sort of close to my heart.
Yeah. I like the way the shadow kind of frames him, and yeah,
Oh
I think
yeah,
Lamar
it's
in the
just
background there. Yeah, it's cool.
it's fun. It was
Oh
just
wow.
celebration image, just look at there's rain all over the lens. Like it's just, I have to say, like that season, the 2019 season, I knew that what was happening was not normal
Hmm.
and it was super special.
Yeah.
And I had never seen so much love inside of any team at any level, especially the pro level, where the players and the coaches, like everybody just really loved each other and liked each other. And And I remember fans coming up to me and they'd be like, "Oh my God, this is the most exciting thing I've ever seen in my life." And they're like, "I'm so excited." And then they would say, "But I'm so worried Lamar is going to get hurt. Like he's not going to be able to keep this up." And I was like, "Look," and this is what I said to so many fans that would come up to me and say this very similar thing. I'd be like, "Just enjoy this ride,
Enjoy the moment.
because
Yep.
whatever's happening right now, this isn't normal." And I was like, it will probably never happen again in this way. And I was like, so just enjoy it for what it is, ride it
Yeah.
out. I was like, because it was, the energy was just, that was so fun. That was such a
Yeah.
fun season.
That's super cool.
And this to me, and these are those sort of celebration jubilation pictures that we just don't get a lot at this angle,
Hmm.
because we're usually shooting downfield instead of right near the bench area. But this was, big play. Lamar comes to celebrate, and Snead is right there. And uh, like, this is, to me, this was all about the 2019 season. It was like real joy and like real love between these guys. And yeah, it's so fun. It's so fun to see. And I got to say, a huge part of that, I would say, 90 something percent of that, it's Lamar, man. Like that guy, his personality and the way he plays and the way he relates to everybody, like I think that's the thing that creates this brotherhood kind of love thing going on in the
Hmm.
team. And it's so fun to photograph.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a very special player, like in all aspects, right? Like you mentioned,
Yeah,
just like obviously a phenomenal player, but also the person that he is and the way that he gets the team to rally. It's
yeah,
something.
it's crazy, man. He's not he's not normal. It's like it's like when people want to, and it's still funny to me that he can be such a polarizing person for some fans. And I say to fans, like, if they're critical of him or whatever, and I don't say, look, you do realize, like, we might be witnessing a generational player.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I was like, you got to understand, he's so unusual that other players on other teams, they know how unusual he is.
Right.
And it's like,
Uh,
and you see these other seasoned veterans, and like everybody, the players know that, like, whatever that guy has, like, I don't have it. It's special. You know what I mean?
right.
It's like,
Yeah.
and I don't think fans really get that. And it's like, you could be witnessing one of the greats ever. I don't know. We'll see. Like, it's like, one of the things that I think about with these guys is, it's like, I just want to see all of them succeed. And
Hmm.
like, whatever their dreams are, it's like, I want to see them, you know, succeed in whatever their biggest dreams are, as athletes. And 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 the reality is it doesn't work out for most of them, right?
Hmm.
And it's like, you meet these guys and you see how hard they work, and they've devoted their whole young life to this thing, and then sometimes it just doesn't work out. And it's like, I don't know what that is, like, and because all of them were huge studs in college, right?
Oh yeah, that's I always
It's
talk about this. It's like they were always the best person on their team, usually to
Yeah,
the NFL, right? Like,
yeah, it's
and
unbelievable.
yeah, like they've been heralded their whole life, and high school as like the star, and in college they had to be
Mhm.
pretty darn good in order to get drafted and all that good stuff. So
Oh yeah.
it it has to be interesting. Even the guys on the practice squad are just fighting to get on the roster. Were at
Mhm.
one point undeniably the best person on the field, and it really shows, I guess, almost the character of the players that do kind of rise above and like keep it up, because it it's hard to be that the whole time and then keep improving on your craft and keep up. I mean, it has to be exhausting, the expectations put on them, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's really something.
It's yeah, I there's a phrase that they like to use at the Ravens facility and the team, and you hear it thrown around a bit, is when they talk about a player, they'll say, "Oh, he's all about football," and it's like, that's what they love. They love the guys that are all about football. That there's no distractions in their lives, like they're
Yeah.
they're focused, and it's Yeah, man, it's nuts. It's the difference between a player having a career, never mind being a star, but actually being a starter and having a career, and the difference between them not and washing out, I think is so razor thin that people don't really realize like how close it is. It's just, and I don't know, nobody knows why like some players are able to adjust and take their game to another level, and then some players they plateau really quickly, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden they're out, and it's
It's
wild.
something to get to the second contract, like you're kind of alluding to, is like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of players after 3 or 4 years they disappear because they rather take a shot on the new young guy or try to see if there's more ceiling to be had and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like you mentioned, like there it has to be kind of razor thin because you can see even when we had like all the injuries, there were still like they weren't maybe obviously the best players in the world, but they
Mm-hmm.
played at a pretty darn good level considering the competition they were going against. And like
Yeah.
yeah, they're just slightly not there, just slightly less, and
Yeah.
they let up one more play a game, and now they're not in the league.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was the thing that was so, to me, was the positive that I took away from last season, was as banged up as the team was, which was really weird. That was
Yeah,
a lot of injuries. To see how many close games there were against, the Rams,
yeah, to go to the Super
like,
Bowl, right, right,
yeah, yeah, right. The Rams who go to the Super Bowl and win it, the Packers, like those were games that we could have won, and they
totally,
were
right,
they were close, and to know that they did it with all those guys that were guys that they signed off the street,
yeah,
and I mean it was wild, man. This
yeah,
is this is the Jets game this season, and Steve here, man, I was so bummed when he got hurt. Um,
yeah,
Such a good guy. Like, oh my God, it, just the most friendly,
mm,
great energy, like always smiling, like in practice. Like every time I turn around, look, the guy's just smiling. He's
yeah,
just beaming, man. He was such a neat dude. I was super bummed when I saw that he got hurt. And um,
yeah.
oh man. And he looked like he was really playing well too.
Yeah, no, he was, and he talked about how the Ravens kind of revitalized his
Yeah.
love of the game and all that stuff, and you can kind of just see in that one image the
Uh
joy he was bringing to each and every like game
such
up. Yeah,
you know, most of the players, a very common question I get from fans is, what is so and so like? What is,
yeah,
so and so, what are they like? And and the way I always describe it is, I'm like, well, they're all young athletes. So most young athletes are pretty shy, like, and they don't necessarily have a lot of social experience, so they're pretty shy and they keep to themselves. And I'm like, and then you, just like any other group of friends or company that you've been a part of, there's outliers at each extreme, and there's a small minority of guys that are like super friendly and outgoing and like always say hi and are really lovely, and then other guys that aren't,
yeah.
and and yeah, Steven was definitely really just charming.
Mm.
Um, yeah, again, I love, he's just got such a great face here.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
He's a good dude. Um,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, I try so hard in practice and pregame to get some different images of Tucker.
Yeah.
We photographed him so much, and and luckily he's tolerant of us. Like, like he's really tolerant of Sean and I, and he's a good dude, and so allows us to get relatively close to him, and while he's in his zone doing his warm-up thing. And
Mm.
yeah, so just looking for this is just me looking for a different way to shoot the thing that we've shot hundreds of times before.
Yeah. It's such a cool composition, though. Really
Yeah,
nice.
thank you. And I love Tucker's whole finishing thing
Hmm.
that he does, and it just, to me, it feels like a dancer to me, the way that he finishes. It's so graceful, and it's got such a style thing going on to it, that I really love.
Mm.
Um, I love how Andrews, you know, on a game day, man, he is so dialed in. Like,
Yeah,
he is just laser focused. And I love when you can see that on his face.
super
And,
cool.
and he's just such a big, he's some of the guys are just so big like him, where I'm like, oh, you're a Viking warrior. I'm just always like, I'm like, that's what a Viking warrior looked
Yeah,
like. And I was like, I would have gotten squashed.
I was at training camp this year, and I haven't been to training camp in a long, long time. Like I remember
Uh-huh.
going when I was a kid and seeing actually Jamal Lewis get hurt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was at that practice, and
Wow.
I feel like I maybe went to one or two more after that, and then there was probably
Uh-huh.
like 15, 20 years I didn't go to a practice because like I don't know. I think they became less and less accessible, and I
Yeah.
don't know. And I just never did. And to be that close to players, I saw him, Calais and
Yeah.
Owe, after practice working on the dummies or whatever they were
Yeah.
doing, like the
Yeah.
hand moves,
Yep.
and you just look at him and like that is a very large dude, and like I feel like
Yeah.
the before social media, I would see them out and about in street clothes because they would do like, oh, they would go to Bateman's and do some radio show with 98 Rock or like
Sure.
all these
Sure.
things, and I feel like they don't do that as much anymore because so much more stuff is online. They can do it anywhere, and
Yeah.
it kind of
Yeah.
changes that relationship seeing actual players like in real life situations or up close and personal, or maybe not wearing their gladiator uniforms and all that. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting.
And it is funny when you do see them in street clothes, they don't look as big.
Yeah,
You know, it's like all of a sudden you're like, oh, you look like a regular football player to me.
yeah,
But it's weird when the whole uniform's on and the pads and everything, it's like this bigger than life thing.
yeah,
But yeah, street clothes definitely kind of changes that. Um, this is a good example of, me just looking for those little moments that show the camaraderie in the
yeah,
team, and I know I love those images. I know the fans really like it. Um, and Prochet is one of those guys that is just super lovely human being.
yeah.
Like
I
I
like him a
I
lot.
I want him to be successful so bad because he's just such a lovely guy, and I
Yeah,
want him to achieve whatever his dreams are.
yeah,
And but yeah, just when I see those little moments,
yeah. I'm super in the bag for Brochet. I feel the exact
it's
same
just
way.
yeah, it's just yeah, great guy, really really neat guy. And this is just something, an image you'll never ever get in a game situation, right?
Yeah,
It's
right,
like
right.
not possible. Wide lens right behind the quarterback. Um and yeah, I all right, I didn't know if I wanted to tell this story, but I'll tell it because it's kind of ridiculous. So in pregame, when the defense and the offense are kind of going through the motions together, the team lines up at the goal line with the coaches
Hmm.
all across the goal line, and um and they start doing the sort of 11 versus 11, and they're going through their motions. Well, at Arizona at the preseason game, I'm there and I'm right behind in the line to make it a broad image, a really wide angle image, like way wider than this one,
Hmm.
um, of Huntley dropping back. And I'm very mindful of the coaches and the players, and especially Harbs, because Harbs can be pretty sensitive about photography
Hmm.
and video. So I'm very hyper aware of where Harbs is at all times. And, well, I just happened to step out of this line forward by one step. I got out of the line a little bit, and Harbs was off to my right by maybe 5 or 6 people over.
Hmm.
And I step out, and Huntley drops back. And I know that I was a very safe distance away from him. It wasn't like I was too close. There was no risk of him getting that close to me or anything. But I just was in the wrong place at the right time. And and Harbaugh like saw me, and this had never happened before. he barked at me. I don't even know what words came out of his mouth because my reptile brain took over.
Uh,
All I know is the words were directed at me, and it was basically, don't do that, get out of the way, although it was not said that eloquently, I'm sure. And I swear, I'm telling you, I jumped like, like a cave cricket. I jumped back so fast. And so like it was just a hair trigger reaction. I leapt back behind the line, and I was like, oh my God, that's not good. That's not good. And it really freaked me out for the rest of the game, because
mhm.
I didn't want to get in John's crosshairs, and I didn't want to upset anything. And
Right, right.
because the thing we don't want to happen is have Harb say, I don't want any photography in the locker room. I don't want any photography near the players, because he can do that, you
Yeah,
know?
that would be,
So
yeah,
we have to be careful.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
um,
Gain that trust. Yep.
oh, this is an interesting. So sometimes these shields that the players wear, can be interesting like this, and I can kind of love it.
Hmm.
But I have to say, like, the shields really bum me out. And thank God the NFL doesn't let quarterbacks have dark shields
Oh,
like they
really?
do. Oh yeah, yeah, no, it's a rule. So the NFL understands that the quarterback is the face of the franchise, so they don't let quarterbacks have dark tinted shields,
Interesting.
because Lamar wears a mirrored shield in practice,
Yeah.
and it is the dark shields. It's something that I wish I could say to every player, but I can't because I'm just a photographer.
Yeah, right. You're just a photographer, right?
No one gives a shit what I think. Um, but it dehumanizes them, because
Yeah.
if you can't see their face, like, they look like robots. Like, all the emotion is stripped out, and it's
Yeah.
like the only emotion that's left is body language, and that just doesn't deliver. And um a good example was like Ingram had that really dark shield that he wore, and for such an expressive guy, you never got to see his face in a game.
Yeah. Mm.
And so all that was stripped away, and I wish I could. I've only said it to one player, and it was during training camp, because he had asked a question to me. He said, it was Dylan Hayes, and he said, he was like,
Oh, okay.
why aren't you taking pictures of me? I was like, which is not true, because I have plenty of pictures of him, but I joked him. I was like, oh, it's because you wear a dark shield. And he was like, what? And I was like, I can't see any emotion. I was like, dark shield, man. And I was I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, because some of the other players heard me say it, and I was like,
Uh,
oh, I don't know. But it's so true. Like, I wish I could
Interesting.
say that to every player in the NFL and be like, if you want fans to fall in love with you, don't wear a dark shield.
Right.
Wear a clear shield. If you have to wear a shield, don't wear a dark shield. Um, it just makes them look like robots. I understand the functional standpoint. I
Yeah.
totally get what the shields can do for you in terms of lighting and contrast and all that, and protection.
Sure. Yep.
Um, but man, yeah.
It's funny too that you bring up Dalen, because that was literally the guy when you were like, when people ask me how this person is, I was like, I want to know how Dalen Hayes is, which is such a like ridiculous
Oh,
person to ask about, right?
yeah, he is. I'll tell you what. I'm still rooting for that guy so hard. I want him to be successful.
Yeah.
He is one of the most lovely people you'll ever meet.
Yeah, I've heard he's a really
Um,
nice guy. Like just from reading about
super
him. Yeah.
cool. I photographed him at an event at the castle where um, it was this really neat event where they had some families come in that their loved one was lost
Hmm.
in the military,
Hmm.
that was lost at war, and so you had these young families with little kids and stuff. And Dalen was one of the players that they invited to be a part of this thing. And at the end of this event, well, all through this event, he's interacting with these families and these like little kids. These are elementary school age kids up through high school age. And I I was really floored at how amazing he was with these families and these little kids. And I asked him at the end of the event, because he even started, like, he was throwing a football with them out on the field. He didn't have to do that. He could have left already.
Yeah.
And he's like tossing the ball with these little kids having fun. And I said, did you grow up with like a bunch of little kids around you? Because you're really good with kids. And he's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, man. And he
Mhm.
just really lovely human being. I really hope that guy, again, I just hope he achieves everything he wants to achieve,
Right. For sure.
neat guy.
So cool.
Um,
But yep.
yeah, I love those moments when guys get super excited. This is, the Jets game and the whole, 9/11 thing.
Right.
Um, I was hoping, I feel like I failed in so many ways to highlight that was related to 9/11, but this was the one image that I was able to get that at least brought some of that into the story of the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Um, yeah, I later found out from Sean when Sean saw these pictures. Sean was like, "Yeah, I normally don't ever get that close to Harbs." He's like, "I'm really surprised you were able to get that close." I was like, I
Fearless.
listen. I'm just feeding off of his body language. I was like, he didn't, because Harbs is very camera aware,
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah.
like, he didn't look at me and tell me to go away. He didn't, give me a look or laser beam me. And I was like, and Steve's really cool, strength coach. So yeah, I just roll with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love, man, I am a sucker for these quiet moments with the players. It's
Yeah. Well, they're super cool too, because then you also get the like just it tells the mood and the emotion of the day, and I think these are really nice shots. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, I those conditions where it's cloudy and it's just sprinkling, like, that's fun to shoot in
Yeah.
because the light is really soft, um and you're not getting the ill effects of the rain. It's just the rain is like, oh, look,
Yeah.
it's just sprinkling. Like, it's like not a
Little
big
dots
deal.
here and there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, you don't have to deal with all the technical stuff.
Very
um
cool.
and
Nice.
yeah, Justin, he's he's very generous with me, and lets me get close. And he's cool. He busts my chops constantly.
I bet.
He's such a character. I swear, like, he's a good dude. And Jordan's great. I'll tell you what, he, like, boy, that guy's just fit in right away. Like,
That's good.
he's just got great energy, and super relaxed.
Cool.
Um,
Oh, Isaiah and
yeah,
Mike Davis and Hill.
yep.
Nice.
Yeah, Justice Hill's another guy. I was so happy to see him starting to run well, and
Hmm.
hopefully he'll be back out there. And yeah,
There
Justin
he is,
Houston.
Houston. His
Yeah,
eyes.
great face.
Yep.
It was
Chuck in
so
the
it was so
background.
wild seeing Flacco. You
Oh, the other
know,
team. Yeah.
yes, it's so. And Flacco looks young, man. Like, I can't believe, like, he hasn't really changed physically since he was with the Ravens. So I was expecting to see like gray hair and stuff, and like I couldn't believe how he
Yeah.
just looked unchanged to me.
That's awesome.
Um, and I like a lot of these images where I end up shooting through like a referee, like in this
Yeah.
situation where normally that, I'm cursing and I go nuts. But then there are times though where I like it because I feel like it gives it depth and it adds a little
Yeah.
dimension and helps tell a part of the story.
I always look for the natural frames. That's like one of my favorite things to do when I'm
Mm-hmm.
shooting is I try to find like the obstruction that actually adds to the image.
Yeah. Oh,
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And
Very cool.
Duvernay's touchdown. Um, Always a tricky thing because receivers turn back towards the quarterback, generally speaking, unless it's over the top. So
Right.
you generally don't see their face when they're catching the ball.
Mm-hmm.
um,
It's really cool.
I wish Lamar would keep his, like, I love when he's got the big afro. Like, I think it is so super badass. And I wish that he would keep that.
Oh yeah, I've never seen this image. Very
Oh
nice.
yeah, this is just one of those moments where it's just he's just so different. And when you see the way he moves and he's able to get out of tackles, I'm just
Mhm.
like, what? I'm just like, I'm like, and the way he jumped out of this tackle, I just thought was so rad. And
Yeah.
it just, yeah, the guy is just such a freak of nature.
I also love the mirroring of the Jets logo with the football and how the football in his hand looks basically identical, with
Yeah.
the threads facing you and just everything about it. So
Yep.
yeah, it's just a cool image, and obviously the emotion on his eyes, him looking down the field, um, and almost kicking the guy in the face as he leaps
Yeah.
away.
It's so crazy, man.
Yeah.
When you think about what a quarterback has to be thinking of every play, he's got so much that he's trying to evaluate that's happening downfield. And then when you play quarterback the way Lamar plays, where he can always be a threat on the ground, it's just like, man, when you see guys like, for me as a fan of football, when you see guys like Lamar and like Mahomes doing what they do, it's just like, man, it's just so next level to me.
Very cool.
Yeah, there's, lucky enough to make all those images of him running. Love the celebration.
Yeah.
It's these guys get so excited. I love it.
Because that was like a pretty cool moment too, because it's the first game of the year. Duvernay has been turning it on in camp, and there's
Yep.
rumblings that he might become like this. Might be his breakout year after seeing bits and pieces, and obviously the Pro Bowl as a returner, and now to see him
Yeah.
really playing and elevating his game and being able to do more than anyone expected. But while I imagine guys like Prochet and Andrews knew it because they practice day in and day out, like see
Yep.
happen on the field for the first time, that you can see just the pure joy.
Yeah, it's incredible, and Duvernay's, he's such a quiet guy. He's really understated and
Hmm.
just goes about his business. And it's funny, I think as fans we assume that the players they're gonna get into the NFL and they're gonna be just great right off the bat, or they're not.
Yeah.
And it's like, for a lot of these guys, it does take time.
Hmm.
And it seems like, I think my observation is like, it seems like receivers, like the third year is
Yeah.
usually when things start coming together for them. Um,
Yeah.
because I think in college, the differential between the guys is just so gigantic that, you know, especially as something like a receiver, like if you're really fast, if you're a 4.3 guy, you're so much quicker than everybody else on the field.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you get to the pros, it's like, oh, that's not going to do it anymore. Like, you
Yeah. That's
actually have to be a great route runner. You've got to know where to go. And so yeah, I think it just, all that stuff takes time. Prochet, I love that Prochet gets as excited for other people scoring as he would for himself. Like, I just think that's so cool.
yeah. Very cool image. And you're right. Like in fantasy football, there this year, like, the last couple of years, it's kind of moved towards the second year breakout for wide receivers. But
Mm-hmm.
traditionally, it was always the third year, like you said. And maybe these guys are a little bit more pro ready than they used to be, in maybe year two.
Definitely, they
But when you're
definitely are.
drafting guys like Prochet and Duvernay in the later rounds, third round for
Mhm.
Duvernay and sixth for Prochet, I think. Like, yeah, taking the 3 years makes sense, but now you're starting to really see it.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that the professionalization of coaching at the amateur levels has definitely changed everything. And I mean, my gosh, you see with the quarterbacks, right? Like, you see the
Yeah.
quarterbacks. So it used to be gosh, you would go into the league, you could be a first round draft pick, and like you would basically apprentice, right, with whoever the
Yeah,
big
yeah,
name,
yeah.
and you'd stay there for like 5 years or something before you were ever playing. And that's, yeah, it's definitely changed so much.
Mhm.
um it'll be fun to see Bateman back. I hope he really starts to break out.
Yeah.
um
How do you feel about the change in jersey number rules and all these players having like single numbers? Do you think it looks better or
I I guess I kind of don't care so much. Like
okay?
I think it's kind of cool to see, like Queen and guys on the defense with these low numbers. And I don't know. I think it brings it more in line with college, the way college has been for a long time. And
Hmm.
I think it's cool. I mean, it certainly gives the players a little more ability to show their personality with their number choice, maybe.
Yeah.
Someone that's bold enough to take number one. Like,
Right, right, right.
like that used to be a big deal, right? It's like, you got to be pretty bold to carry that number, that kind of thing. But I guess yeah, I think it's cool.
Yeah. It's definitely like taking me a while to get used to. It used to be able to tell whatever,
Yeah,
position people were in by their number. Now it's
definitely.
like they could be wearing anything.
Right, definitely. 100%. Um, this image, yeah, I think this is a good example of, you know, Lamar. So right behind the bench at the Meadowlands,
Yeah.
there's like a bar area where people are on the field level,
Oh,
and then they
cool.
have like a low bar, and there's like food and drinks going on. So they're literally right behind the bench with just a little bit of a buffer, maybe 20-yard buffer, maybe 15,
Mhm.
20-yard buffer. And this was like right near the end of the game. And there were some fans that were screaming at Lamar, and he just turned around. And like, I just love that he has remained consistent, even as big of a star as he is now, that he still is, you know, he's just going to be himself, and he's gonna, these kids are screaming for him, right?
Yeah.
And he's not going to ignore them, and it's
That's so
just
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. And I just thought this was a kind of a lovely moment.
Hmm.
The way Lamar is looking at Joe, and they had their little moment there in the middle of the field. It was
Yeah.
cool.
That's great.
But
Thank
yeah,
you so
anyway,
much
man.
for showing all these images. I think people are going to love it. Like I've absolutely adored talking photography with you and seeing these images and hearing you kind of describe your thought process in making them. So I really appreciate you taking the time. This went a lot longer than I thought, but in a good way. Like
All right,
I,
good, good.
yeah, like I didn't know like how it was going to go. I've never really done anything like this before. And it was phenomenal. So thanks for like
Well,
making it. Yeah. Like a
yeah,
great, great moment.
I'm a chatty guy, which is for good and for ill. But yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you. So I feel like I'm the most unknown photographer in the world, because I'm not active on social media, because it
Yeah,
it drives me crazy.
sure.
Although I need to be, and I'm trying to get some help in that regard. I think I've recruited my 20-year-old daughter, and I think
Mhm.
she's gonna start helping me a bit so I can be more active. Um, Sean's really good. I am not good. I
Right.
descend into badness. Um, it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't. Okay, I'm gonna go with that image. I'm gonna go with that. There could be one different, and then I just throw the phone. I just throw it, right.
Right.
But anyway, I wanted to ask you, so how did you find out about me? Because I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
everybody knows Sean.
Kind of
and
his.
and and
So
Sean's
Sean's.
like, and to be frank, like, Sean's one of my closest friends, and I think Sean is the best photographer shooting in the NFL.
Oh
And
wow.
I can say that, without any reserve. And he's just a stud. Like, and I've learned so much from him, because he's been doing it, for he's been shooting the team for 16 years, I think,
Oh
or
wow.
something like that.
Mm.
So 15 or 16. So but yeah, so how did you ever end up landing on me?
Well, I followed Sean on social media for a couple of years now, like
Hmm.
as I got more into photography and actually started like reading the bylines, so to speak, of who actually took the images rather
Yeah.
than, just whatever. And I saw that he hurt himself, and I was like, well, now who's going to be, taking photos? So I started like peeking in, and I was like, oh, there's a couple more people that frequently shoot, and yeah, like I started following your work, and when I had the idea to do this, like I said, I've been thinking about it for a while, but we just started a YouTube channel this season,
Hmm.
kind of having some other content that wasn't just podcasts, and I was like, now that there, because I would, if I were to do this, I wouldn't want it to be just audio. Like I would love to have the photos in it, like that's
Yeah,
the whole point, right? So
that's cool.
I was like, you know what, I'm gonna reach out, but like I just thought like it'd be cool to reach out to you because I don't know, like I remember I found your profile page or your portfolio online, and like you said, the cheerleading photos. I thought those were really nice angles, and I also thought like it was cool to see some of your motocross, I guess, or bicycling
Oh yeah,
photographs,
yeah,
and just like I don't know, I for me at least, I just shoot whatever, like whatever is maybe
sure,
vacation photos, maybe it's just family portraiture or
sure.
whatever, and it's just I don't know. For whatever reason, I just was like, you know what, he seems like a cool guy. Let me reach out to him. So
That's
yeah,
cool. I appreciate that. It's always good to know that there's at least someone out there that's seeing that's seeing, all this uh hard work and sort of emotion that I put into everything. It's good to know that it's not just all disappearing into the ether, and
no.
so that's cool. That's great, man. How long have you guys been doing the podcast thing?
We actually started at 19. We thought we were gonna like we had talked about doing it for a while, and we did a draft preview show.
Hmm.
That was the first show we ever did, right when we drafted Hollywood, and that whole draft class. So
Hmm.
that's kind of when we got started, and yeah, we've been doing it ever since. So it's been fun. Like I said, we had the previous podcast, and we just like we had talked about it for a while, but it was the right moment in all of our lives to start. So
That's
it's
cool.
funny how many people started Ravens podcast around 2019. I think everyone saw
Yeah.
something special with Lamar too, and it was so cool having that season to document it and kind of make it. Like I don't know if I'll ever go back and listen to those old episodes, but maybe one day, like if I'm telling
Yeah,
my kids,
yeah.
"Oh yeah, the 2019 season, you really missed out." Like I can go listen to what I was thinking at that time while I was living it, and I think
That's
that's kind
pretty
of cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. The historical record of it will make
Sure.
it'll grow in importance over time. Right now, maybe too soon.
Yeah, yeah. A little too
Kind of thing.
self-indulgent to listen to
Yeah,
that.
exactly. All
Well,
right, man.
thanks so much. Yeah, and I hope
Yeah.
everyone enjoyed this, and let us know in the comments if you did, because I would love to do more stuff kind of like this, just something a little different.
Yeah, this was fun. I really appreciate it. It was a good time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right, cheers.